Angela, is there anything else that you would like to foot stomp? We didn't get a housing question, so I do want to come to you for a minute before we close.
Yeah, I really appreciate you giving me that opportunity because I did want to touch on a few things that we do have. But one thing on the BH question, the quadrennial review for military compensation was published sometime in the last 10, 11 months, and it did include a number of recommendations for BAH reform. Again, those are our colleagues in personnel and readiness who have the responsibility for BAH, but know that there are some changes that will be coming, particularly as it relates to anchor points. Some other things that we are doing within DoD housing, we have a requirement, every military installation is supposed to complete a housing requirements and market analysis every 5 years. Historically, that outcome was focused on what deficit exists in on-base housing and what would we, in theory, want to build on base to reduce that deficit. We've recognized over the last few months that that outcome is no longer what it should be, and so instead we're changing, making significant changes to the HRMA process to better understand the impact of the installation, the total installation on the local housing market. So this will also include our critical DoD civilians and our contractor workforce to really understand the pressure that we're putting on the local housing market, and then creating tools for our defense communities and our military leaders to engage in conversations about ways that we can get after those housing challenges. Again, ways that we can perhaps work with private sector developers to incentivize development, look at other ways that we can leverage resources from an interagency perspective to bring options for housing affordability and accessibility. We really see this very, very acutely in Hawaii, Joint Base Lewis McChord, many of our coastal areas where there's just not a lot of land to develop, where the housing is constrained, and in places where the tourists might drive up the cost of housing. So we see that as a tremendous opportunity over the next the next year, and that ties right into the administration's priorities for housing affordability and accessibility. We are just getting ready. We just completed, and it's out within the Pentagon for informal review, our Department of Defense instruction on housing. It hadn't been updated in 15 years. So this includes all of the housing reform from 2019 to today. Includes a lot on environmental health and safety, so you'll see some changes coming for both privatized and government-owned family housing. You'll see we've over the last year, we've made great strides on our policies as it relates to unaccompanied housing, so new privacy and configuration standards for our barracks and dorms. This last April, we published new habitability standards for our barracks and dorms, so ensuring that we've got moisture control, temperature control, no more than 2 service members per bedroom, which is actually a law that Congress passed. So really looking at ways that we're delivering better quality barracks and dorms to our service members. We really appreciate Congress's support of our unaccompanied housing, and an extra $1 billion came through the reconciliation process for UH just a couple months ago. So we're working with the military departments now on how that money will be used to improve our barracks and our dorms. And then lastly, something that I certainly want to talk about is on the awareness piece. We have a lot of processes and ways that exist throughout the department to get feedback from our residents into whether it's the local installation or up to DoD. We recognize that we have to go out and do a better job of communicating what those resources are. So for example, we have the Defense Housing Feedback System. It's been in place for about a year. We're going to be pushing more information out through public affairs on the use of that system. That has visibility by our office. We actually pull reports every 2 weeks, and then we reach back out to the military departments to ask them what they are doing to ensure that they're responding to residents and taking care of those concerns. And then at the installation level, we have official processes through the dispute resolution process, both formal and informal. So really encouraging our residents, if you have an issue with your privatized housing in particular, leveraging the informal dispute resolution process or the formal dispute resolution process as the first step in communicating that unresolved issue. That does two things. One, it really gets your concern or the resident's concern into the hands of leadership to help resolve it, and then it helps us understand from a trend perspective or a broader perspective the changes that we need to make, whether it's policy, funding, or other changes. And without having the access to that data, we don't always know where we need to go to make some changes. So thank you for giving me those few extra minutes.
Yeah, so Defense Housing Feedback System, yes? Okay.
Yes.
And that's a way for people to communicate any challenges that they're having with their privatized housing?
Yes, and you can actually, it's primarily focused on privatized housing now. We're looking at ways to bring the government-owned Infantry